Hi, welcome to this episode of Coach in Business. This time I want to talk about the differences between different types of support, assistant, psychological support in personal development, especially about coaching, training, mentoring, and consulting. So we want to take a closer look at all those forms which I just mentioned and get into specifics of how they improve their clients or how a client is improved in such processes. Well, the main dimension on which those support types, assistant types, can be distinguished is the difference between the self-responsibility approach and the dependency on the mastery of others approach. Um, in general, on a highest level, what you can say is that in consulting, in mentoring, and in training, the client is dependent on the mastery of the consultant, trainer, and mentor. In coaching, well, the client is dependent on his own or her own mastery. So this is the main difference. How do we understand it? How we define it? How do we can recognize the difference? Well, let's start with consulting. The consultant is responsible for the content-related assistance and professional help. What does it mean? I'm a consultant in digital marketing, and my clients are dependent on my knowledge, on my experience, on my understanding of digital topics, on my ability to get projects to run. Why they pay me or the company I work for is that they know that I'm very good at what I do, and they know that if they pay me for my help, they will get what they can't achieve or do not have the time or do not have the resources to achieve. So a consultant needs very, very specific knowledge in a very, very specific field, because this is why the clients are going to pay you. So the product of a consultant, what a consultant wants to sell is his or her knowledge. And of course, the client decides about the goal of the consultant's work. So this is like very important. If you get into such a relationship, it's the client who decides. Let's get to the next one, to a trainer. In a training context, a trainer is responsible for building specific knowledge within the client. So a consultant is responsible for content related assistance and taking over the work for the client. A trainer is responsible for proactively building new knowledge within the client. So again, the client is responsible on the mastery of the trainer. The client wants to improve his abilities or his or her knowledge, so that he does not need a consultant in the future to solve difficult tasks, to improve in any specific field. Let's move to the next one, and the next one is a mentor. In general, to make it more clear, you can say that a general is a senior level employee. So a mentor, to be in general a senior level employee, what you have to do is you have to gain experience and a big bunch of experience over time. So the product of the mentor is the knowledge and the experience based on being a senior and having achieved different points. And what the mentor does is he does not train specific content related knowledge, or he does not solve the tasks of the client as like a consultant does, but the mentor gives his experiences to the client, so that the client does not need to fight battles which may have been already fought by the mentor, by the more experienced individual. Well, how do we look at a coach, and why is a coach different? Again, the consultant the client in a consulting setting is dependent on the mastery of the consultant. The client is dependent on the mastery of a trainer, and the client is dependent on the mastery of a mentor. The client is not dependent on the content-related mastery of a coach. The client is dependent on his own or her own ability in a coaching setting. The only thing for what on what the client is dependent on the coach is on his or the coach's ability to provide the framework so that the process is working. So the coach is not responsible for the content of the coaching process. The coach does not need specialized knowledge in any specific field. So me as a digital consultant, I do need special knowledge about the digital branch, about building websites, about how websites function, about how systems interact with each other, about what interfaces are, etc. But I do not need to know those things as a coach. As a coach, I need to know how to provide a framework. As a coach, I need to know what the main techniques are and how to use them so that the framework works. So proactive listening and question thinking, question asking. So the coach is responsible for creating the environment, and the coachee is responsible for getting to the outcome, is responsible for the outcome, and is responsible for the outcome by being responsible for the content of the coaching process. So it's not like the consultant is coming in and providing all the information necessary to solve a question. It's not like the trainer is like training all the abilities which you might need to solve your task. It's not like the mentor is coming in and telling you that he has already or she has already fought the battles. It's you as a client who is developing new abilities by developing them by yourself, and increasing your performance, developing yourself, so that in the future you will be not dependent on consultants, mentors, trainers, and even coaches maybe. What kind of specifics do we have when we talk about the coaching process? Because it's a major element in coaching. The coaching process has a high degree of adaptation, so it's very hand and tailor-made. As I said in my other video about what coaching in itself is. Coaching is applicable in most cases. Again, we talked about it. You can get a coaching in personal life, in private life, in love relationships. You can get coaching for your business improvements, for improving your whole business, your whole company on an organizational level, etc., etc. And it's independent from the content, which makes it applicable for most settings. So again, the main difference between training, consulting, and mentoring when comparing it to coaching is that in coaching, the client is not dependent on the mastery of the coach. The client is dependent on his or her own mastery, and while improving own mastery, your own mastery will improve. So consulting, mentoring, and training focus on the content of the process. So when I'm as consultant, as a trainer coming into a company, I have to bring my knowledge with me. I have to bring my playbook with me. The client is dependent on the specialized knowledge. The professional leads always the client, and it's not the client who leads the process. Again, as a coach, I provide the process. The client is leading through it. Knowledge of the consultant, trainer, or mentor and experience is the product. The client's outcome depends on the mastery, and this means that mentors, trainers, consultants do take over responsibility for the outcome. So if I get into a company as a consultant and the project fails, I'm responsible for the project failing. As a coach, if a client fails, a coach is not responsible for the failing. A coach is responsible for the failure of the process, or for a bad process, but he or she is not responsible for the failure of the client within such a process. And this is the main difference. Again, we will talk about the main effects main effects and why coaching is so effective in another video. In the next video, we will talk about the difference between coaching and psychology. So why should you and when should you visit a psychologist, and when should you visit, or when might be a visit with a coach might be a good idea. In general, thank you for listening. In general, please like, comment, subscribe, share whatever you can find about coaching business, and thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye bye.